Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for November 8th through 14th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 1 show, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 1 book. Before I get into the books, I just wanted to show you something that I received when I woke up this morning via Instagram. Somebody who watches my videos made some fan art of me and it's amazing. Look at it. I'm going to link their art Instagram down below if you want to go check them out, but I love this. Like, it's even got the wall I usually film in front of in the background. It's so cool. Speaking of, today I'm filming in the second library because when I moved in there was already a library upstairs and that's where I usually film my weekly wrap-ups, but there are people upstairs. So now we're in the second library, which was just an empty room before I moved all of my crap into it. It does have a very impressive built-in bookcase and I would love to film in front of it, but I don't have the right light for that, so we're on the floor because I like to sit when I film. The first book I read this week was Holy Wild. This is a poetry collection by a trans Indigenous author, and a lot of the content has to do with being trans and Indigenous and that specific intersection, and that's what made this very interesting. If you've been here for a while, you probably know I don't really have that many intelligent things to say about poetry or poetry collections, other than whether or not I enjoyed it, and this one was definitely well written. And although there are harsh topics covered in this one, and there are trigger warnings for transphobia and that type of thing, I did overall enjoy my experience with this one. The second book I finished this week was Fire Song. This is another book that I was reading for the Indigathon. I didn't really know anything about this one going in besides our main character was Indigenous and had a boyfriend, and although that is accurate, it is more complicated than that because his boyfriend is actually a secret boyfriend. His boyfriend is his deceased sister's best friend, and he has a girlfriend because his boyfriend doesn't want them to be outed, so it's basically a cover. The girlfriend, of course, has no idea, and our protagonist has genuine feelings for her, but he's trying to figure out his feelings for the secret boyfriend. Not to mention he's grieving his sister who committed suicide about 6 weeks before our book started, and also his mom has basically checked out. She won't leave the house, their house is falling apart. He's trying to go away to school and that's looking less and less likely just because of financial strain, and where is he going to get the money to do so? As you can likely guess from that rambling, this is another dark, hard-hitting book, and I also very much enjoyed it. I do know there's a movie. I am going to have to watch it at some point. This week I also read a book from my recent Christopher Pike haul, and that was Slumber Party. Wow, was this a trip. I used to read these books all the time when I was a kid, and I probably wouldn't have picked up on all of the not so great things when I was a kid, but wow, did I ever make a list this time. This book is about 6 single girls who are going to one of their parents' ski lodge house things in the woods, and it's pretty isolated, and they're going skiing, and then they're having a slumber party and that type of thing. But then weird things start happening, and they can only think back to the last time they had a slumber party 8 years ago where somebody died. It's somewhat cheesy horror, and I like that genre, so I enjoyed reading it, but the things that are pretty much wrong with it are there's a lot of girl hate. They talk about anorexia as though one of the characters should acquire it to stay slim. They talk about disfigurement as being very unsettling. They talk about people having ugly faces. Our main character thinks that she is bad at dating because she hasn't been on a date in 6 weeks. There's a lot of food shaming and fat phobia. There was a line where one of the girls had been accosted by this guy and then somebody else asked her if she liked it. And then there was a flashback to when they were 9 and they were drinking and talking about sex. Don't know about you, but that definitely wasn't my experience of being 9 years old. Anyway, I enjoyed this blast from the past. I am going to continue to read my Christopher Pike books, but I will be critical of them. The show I watched this week was The Magicians. We actually watched the entire first season and the first 10 episodes of the second season because we just kept going with the episodes. I read the first book in this trilogy years ago, and I didn't want to continue the trilogy because the way that female characters were written and their purpose to the plot and just some of the writing, it was kind of she-boobed-boobily writing, and I just wasn't here for that. One of the things that I remember from reading the book is I really hated that we didn't get to see Julia's story until the very end. I'm being purposefully vague because if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it, that type of thing, but she's basically, we just see her at this like very intense moment, but we don't get to see how she got there, and that is something that is rectified in the show. For those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, this show is about a guy named Quentin who finds out that magic is real, and he's always thought thought that it must be because he really loved this book series called Fillory and Further, and he has this theory that Fillory is a real place and he really wants to go there. This show has a cast of characters who are delightful and or assholes depending on the situation, and it's fun to see a fantasy show where they legitimately use magic and sometimes go to different worlds, but they also swear all the time. And they find out that there's this school called Brakebills where they can go for their postgraduate, basically a 3-year diploma in magic. If that sounds interesting to you, check it out. It does get gory at parts. Like I said, there's so much swearing, there's so much just young adults being young adults, lots of sex, and also trigger warnings for sexual assault and death of loved ones. This week we watched Enola Holmes, and as my roommate put it on, she thought that it was a TV show, and she's like, wow, this episode is really long, and I'm like, that's because it's a movie. This movie follows Millie Bobby Brown playing Sherlock Holmes' younger sister and her adventure to find her mother who has disappeared. This does a lot of fourth wall breaking, so she's talking directly to us, the audience, and I really love to see that. This was also feminist and fun and had a great cast, and I just really enjoyed it. Something I enjoyed far less is the remake of The Witches, which came out a few weeks ago and has some bad things to do with its marketing and how the witches were portrayed in the remake. I was very excited to see some of the cast of the remake. It has a pretty strong cast. I also really enjoyed that we cast a young black boy as our protagonist. However, the marketing for this movie asked children to be on the lookout for witches, which essentially means that they are now on the lookout for people that have bodily differences and then will be yelling at that person that they're a witch, and that's just not cool. I'm not the right person to talk about this in depth, so I'm going to link down below some resources from Jen Campbell, who talked a lot about this over the last little while because of the way that the witches are portrayed. In this remake, the witches were essentially given ectodactyly, which is a condition that Jen has and speaks about frequently, so I will refer you to some of her articles and videos. The book I listened to this week was We Hunt the Flame. This takes place in a fantasy world where magic has been taken out of this world, and they kind of really relied on it at the time, and our protagonist is given a chance to go on a quest to get magic back. We have dual perspectives. Our female perspective is a girl that has been going out and hunting for her family, but has been dressed as a man the entire time, so is just known as the Hunter. And for one reason or another, the Sultan's not too impressed by this. Our male perspective is the Sultan's son, who has been trained as an assassin, and they don't have a good relationship. Side note, the narrator for the male character is Steve West, who's the guy that did the Strange the Dreamer duology, and I really love his voice. So I was very excited when I was like, ooh, and it's Steve West. Neat. There were a lot of twists and turns in this adventure, so if you're into traveling stories that have some politics and some light magic in the background, this is definitely one to pick up. I found myself not really paying the closest attention, and I think that was just a me problem. I just don't think I was really in the mood for this particular audiobook, but because I get my audiobooks from the library and they get returned after 3 weeks, I just wanted to make sure that I actually listened to it before it would return. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I recently set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as my PayPal or my Amazon wishlist if you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!